So let's move on. We've got LCS playoffs coming right up, Thorin. LEC just started. But before that, I want to have a conversation about a young rookie's performance named Milkyway.
Because it's the thing, Monty. Do you know what we actually have to do for real? I said this on Twitter, but people think I'm joking. Bro, this guy for real, we have to treat him like the League of Legends donk, mate. Like, this isn't just like a good player or a rookie. Bro, like, Rich's Wrath is right. This guy might actually just be the best League of Legends player, like, straight. This is like, it reminds me for real of, you remember this, Monty, of when Faker came out that first season. And the joke was, it's like, he was immediately the best. Like, the only debate anyone basically had, like the donk guy, was will they do it in the playoffs, basically, right? Because you remember when Faker came out, I always tell that story, that everyone voted Ambition as the all-star mid laner, but that was just because of experience in history and the fact he was on Blaze. Like, if you actually just watched with your eyes, no joke, even the first split he played, Faker was already the best player. And mate, this guy, Milkyway, the jungler of FPX, it's the same thing again, mate, because here's the problem people won't realize. I've made this analogy before. So obviously it was FPX that had Bo that did something similar, right? You remember all those years ago when he came along? But the difference is, Bo had fucking Doinby, guys. One of the best mid laners ever at Wicked. This guy has nothing. Like, the other players are aight at best. Like, I think actually the sport's not bad. He's actually playing better.
Life is actually playing very well right now.
I'll give him credit. But aside from that, mate, he doesn't even really have anything on his team. Like, the others are just all right. Like, the care guy's okay. It's not bad. But, mate, this Milky Way guy, for real, like, it could be a contender for best player in the world. This is unbelievable, right? The scale has just blown my mind, bro. It's insane.
And it just keeps getting better, Thorin. It just keeps getting better. Because although they did lose to BLG last week, they already just went against JDG and, like, clapped them 2-0. They beat Top Esports, even though I will say the top loss or the top win was fraudulent. Like, Top Esports was the better team in that best of 3. They just had a lead and then traded Nexus for Baron. Like, that was just dumb. And I don't think that mistake gets made a lot, again, basically. And I think if you replay that series 100 times, Top wins the majority of them. I didn't leave that series on an FPX win thinking, FPX is the better team here. I left thinking Top is the better team. That was a freak game 3. But that said, this team has had much better results than they really have any right receiving, and a lot of that is Milky Way. And it is a comparison I made on Power Spike last week, because Degon asked the question, like, when was the last time we saw a rookie this good? And I said, well, it sure looks a lot like Faker to me from the early days of Faker, because there wasn't really a ramp up time, Thorin. It was like, holy shit, these guys are so good right away. And I think you might say like Chovy or Viper on Griffin as well. But the thing about that Griffin roster was that they were playing together and all of them ended up being super good in the end. So it was the
difference is, Monty, I could see a world where none of these other teammates are going to make it. It's just this one guy, just him, just Milky Way. He is him, really.
Yeah. And I think it's even more amazing because, I mean, they realize that he is the win condition of this team. So what, the question is, what is Care doing on this roster? Like, he's playing a lot of kind of engage or control mage champions that are supportive in nature. I mean, he played Annie in the last game that they played against JDG. He plays Karma. He plays Azir. He plays Nico. The entire purpose of this comp and this team is basically to set up Milky Way and to have him be on these carries. He draws Graves bans. He draws Kindred bans. Now, Jun is maybe drawing some Kindred bans at some points in time, but it's not like every fucking game. And if you don't ban Kindred, he just goes apeshit on you, and you can't really do anything about his presence on the game. His Graves games have been really powerful. So you see like Kindred banned and then Graves banned in the second rotation. So it frees up a lot of power picks for his teammates to go after.
He plays every carry jungler as well, It's like he's a stud, mate. He's just a stud. You can't ban him out.
Yeah, and okay, well, you ban those two. Well, then he gets Jin Zhao, or he finds way to carry on some of these. He's played tanks, this split as well. He's been versatile. And I think later this week on my stream, I'm just going to go through a bunch of the games and like discuss, kind of do a deep dive on what is making him so good right now individually, and identify for myself and for you guys some of the major points about his gameplay, because I was streaming my reviews of the JDG versus FPX game today. And, you know, there's so much to like about this guy, his team fighting, his willingness to initiate and shot calling, because he's clearly calling the shots because he's re-engaging fights and telling his teammates to do it. We could talk about his like game sense about where the enemy jungler is on the map, and his counter ganking is actually extremely strong. So really it's pretty amazing to see what's going on right now. And I do think, to your point, Thorin, that Life is very underrated, because one of the key facets of this team is that Life and Milky Way actually have very good synergy together, especially because Life is there basically to plan with Milky Way about how they're going to create engages, and that jungle support engage synergy, when we have Life playing Maokai or Alistair, or even now we've seen 4 games of him playing Rumble support, which, by the way, completely shit on Ruler and Missing, like shit on them. In the games that were played last night. This has been a really good thing to see. So he has some help, but this team is really based around, you know, this guy and his ability to carry. And his performance has been through an extremely tough schedule. I mean, this because
LPL, he even carries in some of the losses. You notice he's just a stud.
He was good against BLG. He was good against BLG, even though they lost those games relatively convincingly. He was going down fighting. And I mean, listen to the last couple of weeks of FPX's strength of schedule, because they basically got all the hard teams in LPL in a row. Yeah. They literally had a week where they went 3-0 against Top, NIP, and Weibo. Okay. Then they lost to BLG the next week. They just played JDG. Their next match is against IG. Now, if you guys don't know, those are all of the other teams besides them in a top 6 in a row. In a row. Like, what?
Let's be real. At this point, all these other coaches are aware this guy's out there, and everyone's trying to stop this guy fucking beast moding you. Like, everyone's even planned the whole draft to fuck this guy, of course.
Yeah.
They just can't stop him.
Yeah, and like, it's been exceptional. And I think those of you guys who have been watching the games understand this. You know, FPX is also going to end the season with games against Rare Atom, Thunder Talk, and RNG, which is a pretty easy end to the split. So if they take the win later this week against IG, you know, they might end the season 12-4, which is really good for LPL. You know, but even 11-5 is going to put them in a pretty strong playoff position. Now, do I think they have the talent and the pieces to make a deep run in LPL playoffs? Probably not. I mean, they are.
Oh, there's no way. Come on.
Yeah,
they're not going to win best of 5s. Come on.
They are a little bit fraudulent in that some of their wins, it's felt like they have just crazy plot armor, and like God wills them to win. And, you know, sure, that'll work in a game here or there, but over the course of an extended, like, of multiple best of 5s, like, you probably just don't get away with that. Like, I don't think they come into a best of 5 against top esports as a favorite. I think they come in as a pretty heavy underdog. But this is, I mean, it's just really crazy. I mean, his pathing is excellent. His mechanics are excellent. His champion pool is excellent. It really is a wonderful thing to watch. And this is a story that feels like hasn't happened very many times, where a player right from the start is just insane. And I've also made jokes about basically Care being the mid lane equivalent of Bengi to his jungle Faker, because Care is an enabler for him in many ways and does travel with him on the map. So yeah, it's crazy. And you should be watching FPX games if you're not right now. You should go back and watch the JDG series.
Yes.
You are really missing out on maybe not the best League of Legends, but it certainly is unique and it certainly is fun. And you are watching the start of a player's career who seems like he is going to be a megastar.
I mean, let's be real. I mean, I know there's this whole story that apparently like RNG, the one that owned him, and they lent him to FPX or whatever. Obviously, neither of those teams are good right now in terms of, like, as you say, the actual other players. But the joke is, if you could just get this guy next year onto a real roster, everything's possible. Like, you can win everything, mate. This guy's really insane, doesn't he? I agree with you. That's why I give the analogy to what's happening in CS2 right now with Donk, where we had this player come along who also isn't playing like the most traditional like star up, but he's like the best player in the whole game. He's just like, so far he has smurfed all his opening attempts, including in the biggest tournaments. And so that's why I want to watch this, because I actually do get this vibe that that's what's different. There's been players who were like the best player before, but not in your first split. And then also, like we're saying, bro, I've never seen a player that was on a team as bad as this be this good. That's the thing that's crazy. Because like I say, the Bo one at least has a logic to it that you were with Doinby, like prime Doinby too. Oh, yeah, I will say, I did see a joke that even though they didn't phrase it properly, so I'll make their joke better, Monty. Here's the joke. When the only thing about watching Milky Way that's a bit of a downer is just knowing that next year he'll be on Sejuani duty in an LEC team. There you go. There's the joke for you. Vitality. Bo, whatever. Because we all know what they did to fucking board it. No, the thing is, for real, I would actually say this is a rare example in leagues. I actually think leagues are one of the worst games for following individual players, unless you had things like ProView where like added the clicks and stuff. This is a rare example of a player, like I said, where, dude, even in the losses, you could still watch just this player alone and you'll be entertained. Like, because the other thing is as well, I actually think that's what's so insane. Like, this guy just is a demon, mate. Even when he's losing the game, he doesn't do that thing where he just gives up. Like, he fucking just keeps fighting the whole time. Like, it's really entertaining to watch. Like, I think for real, this guy, by the way, I'll just say this right now, he's almost certainly going to be the MVP of the LPL. Let's be real. Like, he's just going to be. If people don't know, he was winning the MVP award in the games they lost. Like, this guy's too good. He's too good.
I mean, he's on top of the man of the match standings right now with 10, Kanavi with 9, Angel from OMG with 8. So he's already kind of on top of, and like, you have to consider too that OMG is not exactly a team that has been winning as much as other teams. They're a 50% win rate team. It just happens that Angel has won 8 of those MVPs because he's been kind of the biggest factor on there, right? So amongst top teams that are actively winning, Milkyway has been carrying. He has been the best rookie for every single week except for last week. And the only reason Sheer is because Milkyway lost, and Milkyway only played 1 best of 3 last week.
Yes.
And the week before, he was just the best player overall. And he's the only rookie who's been in that category. So at the end of this split, especially Thorin, because I think we can anticipate that he is absolutely going to style on the rest of their competition after their match against IG. And if he can style on LAN too on IG, that'll be another, big story potentially. But because he's probably just going to eat the other junglers alive for the rest of their split, I think you can assume like he's going to end on a very big high. And that's going to be a pretty compelling reason to vote him as MVP of the entire league.
It's going to be cool that even though, like you, I don't expect him to do anything, to even just see him play the playoffs is going to be cool. We're going to get to at least see probably our playoff series one at least, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
He's won so many games already.
I mean, like I said, what's the likely result of the rest of their games? Like, it's either 4-0 or 3-1 is the most likely result, which puts them either at 11-5 or 12-4, and that'll put them very, very high within the overall playoff structure. And you can get a lot of buys or play kind of very deeply into the tournament in that point in time. Like, if you are a top 4 seed, you get seeded directly into the third round of playoffs, where if you win 1 best of 5, you're now in the double elimination portion. And FPX probably is a favorite between any of the other teams that could be fighting up in the bracket to meet them at that point in time. So you win that one, best of 5, and you're already top 4. So the question is FPX a top 4 team in the LPL? And I think the answer is I don't understand how you couldn't make that argument if the result is that they even beat top esports, and if the only top team that they've lost to in the kind of the back half of the season is going to be BLG, but they listen to this, they literally beat top, they beat JDG. If they can beat IG, those are the 3 other teams besides BLG ahead of them in the standings right now, and they beat NIP, the team below them. Their losses came into the very first part of the split. So based on recent form, I think you have to say that they're crazily enough a top 4 team in the LPL, even with all the flaws in this roster. So the question
is just Milkyway. It's also Milkyway.
The question is whether he just gets put back in RNG prison
Sure.
at the end of this. Like, does he have to go then be this player on an RNG roster that may not have the coaches or the players who are willing to play the style around him? Because I think he is also benefiting from just a freak circumstance where the right players were put around him, where if he had to be on a bad roster, at least players like Care and Life.
Yes, that's true.
Are
he got some
willing
setup, exactly. He's not just doing it all
set
on his
him
own.
up.
That's true. Yes,
right?
That's true.
Because
Yes.
like if you get a player with the wrong champion pool or an ego or wanting to prove something for themselves, because they really, really are trying very hard to play his style and play around him and enable him as much as possible. And it takes the coaching staff and the other players buying into that in order to produce the success that is currently existing.
I will also say as well, because I always like to bring this up, the sort of like alchemical correspondence. Milkyway, just a dope ass alias as well. What a fucking sick name.
It's great.
It's a fucking great name, isn't it?
Galactic skill. Yeah, it's good.
Fire.
Plus, all the Milkman memes are very funny too.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of good shit. We got a lot of good shit going on. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to watch this guy play so far, and I think people are very justifiably hyped up about him, and hopefully he can continue to kind of move forward with his career. And
by the way, I've got an angle for you, Monty. This is where, though, I actually, for real, do think that like people in esports just can't be helped, mate. Like, we have all the resources here to do this, and no one's doing it. Like, why? How is it possible, Monty, that me and you are having this convo now? I saw on Power Spike you were having the same discussion. Everyone right now who watches the LPL is talking about this Milkyway guy. How is this not the number one story on LOL esports? Like, guys, tune in next. Will he beat the next squad he plays? This should be like Linsanity. Remember that like years ago? It should be like a massive phenomenon where everyone in the game, like we are in CS with the Donk guy, is tuning in every game. Like, will he keep it going? Will the streak continue? Is he the best player ever? Like, how is this not like an insane media for all? Like, you should actually be funneling everyone to the LPL now, guys.
I mean, I just think it's bonkers because, yeah, they lost to BLG last week, but that they just came and like smacked JDG into the ground yesterday. And you're like, oh, shit. Like, this is the core of this team is still the team that was so dominant in the LPL last year. This has fucking Ruler and Missing on it. You know what I mean? Like, and even though the rest of this roster definitely isn't as strong, like Flandre is a world champion, guys. Like, Yagao is a famous player, right? Kanavi still here on this roster, still an elite jungler. And this team that pound for pound is obviously significantly worse than JDG with none of the superstar potential is just putting him in the dirt. And like, that's a powerful thing to say. Like, especially considering that some of these players have just like, especially Dokdam has been like actively not good a lot of this season. Xiaolao, who's been okay, Care's been okay, Life has been pretty good and certainly has very good synergy with Milkyway, and Milkyway's been fucking incredible. But Dokdam probably had his best series against JDG. Like, he legitimately, I think, played a lot better than I've seen in many of the more recent series. But sometimes it's like an uphill battle where they just have to drag Dokdam's corpse across the finish line in the process. Or Milkyway has to play AD carry. If we're being honest, like Milkyway has to play Kindred. Milkyway has to play Graves. It's kind of ridiculous. Dokdam is on Senna so that Life can actually farm and be useful on Maokai. So, yeah, it's a remarkable story. But it is, I agree, Thorin, it's very weird that this isn't more of the conversation. And I think it just has to do with the LPL's popularity, because I promise you, if this was happening in Korea, everybody would be talking about it.
Oh, no, for sure. Come on.
Yeah. I think everybody would be talking about this story if Milkyway was a Korean player in the LCK and all of a sudden, he emerges on Kwangdong or whatever, and then Kwangdong, goes ahead and like actually makes a run at the top 3. Like, this is all you'd be hearing about. The equivalent to this, guys, is if Kwangdong actually just beat D+ and KT, and Bull was like a fucking god when they substituted him in. Bull looked like the next great ADC player in the world. And then not only were they beating those mid-table teams, but they actually just take out Hanwha and T1 in the process and then like lose a game to Gen G. You'd still be talking about this team, and you'd absolutely be talking about Bull. That hasn't happened, but that's kind of the equivalent narrative if you're an LCK fan.
I also think the other thing to add in is it's actually, in theory, easier to be a donk or a simple in Counter-Strike because the game isn't as much snowballed against you. Like, your power isn't crushed by the enemy getting stronger. Whereas the thing in League is, like, the reason I'm always so impressed, Monty, when you get, like, a Milkyway or a Viper right now, and even when their team's, like, a bit meh, they just carry every time. Because, bro, the game League of Legends is basically designed not to allow one person to carry from the losing team. Like, everything in all the game mechanics basically crush you. So, and they're playing out a jungle and fucking ADC, and these guys are just studs. Like, they can't be stopped. So I think in the rare instances where people do it, you just know they actually are just bona fide. Like, there's no like fraudulent element to what's going on here. There's no smoke and mirrors that could be making this guy look good if he wasn't actually this good. Like, he just is the fucking... Like, the joke is everyone's been making these memes, but, like, this is some, like, Dune shit. This guy is just, like, the fucking chosen one. It's insane. And I'll just throw this in there as well. He's a fucking Chinese jungler as well, guys. Like, here's the other thing. If some Korean came along, we're used to Korea as the best junglers of all time. Like, China usually had all the ones that were the memes, the MLXGs, Tians. Like, you know, they're either, like, really good or they just in like a motherfucker. This guy actually looks well-rounded as well. Like, that's why what I really hope is that he just gets a better team, but also one that still plays around him. Because this guy has a future, mate. Like, we could be watching this guy for like 5 years. It could be sick.
I also have enjoyed the Dune memes around him of everybody just saying Lisan Al Gaib.
Yeah, sure.
It's very funny. I am enjoying that. We are all Stilgar in this moment.
In the desert of like fucking inefficient Chinese jungling, along comes the fucking, you know, fucking new messiah that will lead us all to the fucking future, isn't it? Like, it's insane. I know. The golden path of Chinese jungling.
That's right. And, you know, the Chinese scene, LPL thought they were finally in control of Arrakis, aka the World Championship, but then the Harkonnens, the LCK, came back and kicked their asses, and now they have to form an underground guerrilla movement with the new prophet Milkyway to retake the World Championship. I mean, the stories write themselves, right?
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.